The air hung thick and heavy, a noxious blend of dust, sweat, and fear. The abandoned factory floor sprawled before them, a labyrinth of shadows and echoing silence. Keshav, his senses on high alert, adjusted the tactical vest that hung heavy on his shoulders. Beside him, Saurabh, his gaze sharp and unwavering, checked the action of his sidearm. They were deep inside the belly of the beast now, the industrial complex, a brooding monolith against the dying light. The mission to rescue the hostage, a young woman named Ria, held captive somewhere within these decaying walls. Every creak of metal, every rustle of wind through broken windows sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through their veins. Ready? Keshav mouthed, his voice barely a whisper in the oppressive silence. Saurabh nodded, his expression grim but resolute. They moved then, silent and swift as wraiths, their training kicking in, transforming them into instruments of precision and purpose. The fate of a life hung precariously in the balance, and they were the only thing standing between hope and despair. They navigated the maze of rusted machinery and discarded debris, their eyes constantly scanning for any sign of movement, any clue that would lead them to Ria. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the rhythmic thud of their own hearts. A faint sound, like a muffled sob, reached Keshav's ears. He held up a fist, signaling Saurabh to halt. They exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of the shared danger and the urgency of their mission. He motioned towards a darkened doorway, partially concealed by a tangle of wires and metal sheets. With infinite caution, they approached the doorway, their weapons drawn. Keshav peered around the corner, his heart pounding in his chest. There, in the dimly lit room beyond, he saw her. Ria sat huddled on the floor, her back against the cold concrete wall. Her hands were bound, and her eyes, wide with terror, darted around the room. She looked pale and exhausted, but there was a spark of defiance in her gaze that flickered like a small, determined flame. Beside her stood a man, his back to Keshav. He was tall and imposing, his suit a stark contrast to the grimy surroundings. He paced back and forth like a caged predator, his voice a low growl that sent shivers down Keshav's spine. "Mr. Mehta," Keshav said, his voice firm despite the tremor that ran through him. The man whirled around, his hand darting to the gun holstered at his hip. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto Keshav's. "Who the hell are you?" Before Keshav could respond, another figure emerged from the shadows behind Mehta. Rajiv Malhotra. His face, normally a picture of charisma and confidence, was contorted with rage. He held a gun, its barrel pointed directly at Ria's trembling form. "Step away from her!" Malhotra barked, his voice laced with menace. His eyes darted between Keshav and Saurabh, a dangerous glint in their depths. "Or the girl pays the price." The air crackled with tension. Keshav felt a surge of protectiveness for Ria, her vulnerability a stark reminder of the stakes of their mission. He knew one wrong move, one misspoken word, could have devastating consequences. Keshav took a slow, deliberate step forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Malhotra," he said, his voice calm and steady, "this doesn't have to end badly. Let Ria go. It's not too late to walk away from this." Malhotra laughed, a harsh, humorless sound that echoed through the cavernous space. "Walk away? You think this is a game? She's collateral, leverage. And you," he said, his gaze fixed on Keshav, "you're about to learn a very valuable lesson." Keshav held Malhotra's gaze, refusing to back down. He could see the desperation in the man's eyes, the fear that lurked beneath the veneer of control. He knew he had to find a way to reach him, to appeal to whatever shred of humanity remained. "Rajiv," Keshav said, his voice softer this time. "Think about what you're doing. Think about the consequences. Is this the legacy you want to leave behind?" The words seemed to hang in the air, a lifeline thrown into a raging sea. For a moment, the only sound was the ragged breathing of the men and the terrified whimpers escaping Ria's lips. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, Malhotra's grip on the gun loosened. "You don't understand," Malhotra whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I had to do this. They left me with no choice." Keshav pressed his advantage, his voice firm but compassionate. "There's always a choice, Rajiv. Let us help you. Let Ria go." As Keshav spoke, sirens wailed in the distance, their sound growing louder with each passing second. Malhotra's eyes widened in panic, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. He glanced from Keshav to Saurabh, then back to Riya, his face a mask of confusion and fear. "It's over, Rajiv," Saurabh said, his voice firm but devoid of malice. "There's nowhere left to run." The sirens reached a deafening crescendo as police cars screeched to a halt outside the factory. The building seemed to pulsate with the approaching footsteps of officers, their arrival signaling the imminent collapse of Malhotra's world. Malhotra's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. With a trembling hand, he lowered the gun, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and resignation. As tears streamed down Riya's face, a mixture of relief and terror, Keshav slowly approached Malhotra, his hand outstretched. Saurabh, ever vigilant, covered Keshav, his eyes scanning the room for any last-minute surprises. Mehta, his face pale and his composure shattered, sank to his knees, his reign of power broken. The police stormed the room, their movements swift and practiced. Within seconds, Malhotra and Mehta were disarmed and subdued, their wrists bound with tight metal cuffs. The nightmare was finally over. Keshav gently helped Riya to her feet, his heart aching at the sight of her tear-streaked face. She clung to him for a moment, her body trembling with the aftershocks of fear and adrenaline. He held her close, whispering words of comfort and reassurance until the tremors subsided. Outside, the night air was filled with the sounds of police radios and the murmur of voices. Riya, wrapped in a warm blanket, was reunited with her frantic family, their tearful embrace a testament to the enduring power of love and the relief that washed over them. As Keshav watched them, a profound sense of satisfaction settled over him. They had saved a life tonight. They had faced down darkness and emerged victorious. Later, as the adrenaline faded and the events of the night replayed in his mind, Keshav found himself drawn to Aliya. They stood together, shoulder to shoulder, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of pink and gold. "We make a good team," Aliya said, her voice soft but steady. Keshav smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Yeah," he agreed, "I think we do." They had faced their fears tonight, pushed themselves to their limits, and emerged stronger, both individually and as partners. The rescue operation had tested them, forged a bond between them that ran deeper than ever before. They were no longer just colleagues, they were something more. They were a team, united by their shared experience and their unwavering commitment to justice.